This is Legacy Battle. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, notification button. I'm Michael Adams, my panelist tonight from the Gridiron Battle Zone, Brian King. From the NHL 90s Hockey Room, Chris Callahan, Steelers Nation South, Rollo Coffin. Our debate tonight is the greatest defensive forward of all time, excluding Bergeron, because if we put Bergeron in this, it's kind of not really a debate. So we're just going to agree that he's the GOAT. So we're going second greatest ever. Talking Selke winners tonight. We are joined by a 16-year NHL center / left wing. Played 853 games in the NHL with the Nordiques, the Hawks, the Jets, and the Capitals. He has received votes for the Selke Trophy twice. Picked up a bronze medal at the '83 World Junior
Well,
Championships
I
representing
picked
Team
up. I
Canada.
I had votes.
You did,
I
yeah,
had no clue that. You just made my
yeah.
day.
I'll get you the numbers here too before we're done, but it's now that you know. So we want to welcome Michael
I'll sleep
Eagles.
better
Michael,
tonight. I can tell you that much.
thank you so much for joining us, Michael. We appreciate you
My
being
pleasure.
here. Awesome. As always, we're going to have a Q&A after for him about his career, which I guess he just learned a little bit about from us. But we're going to jump into our debate, and we'll start with Rollo.
Tonight, I am representing Pavel Datsyuk, or as he was known as Magic Man. He's a former Red Wing center from Russia. He was first noticed by Red Wings European scouting director Hakam Anderson, who was in Moscow scouting another player. Anderson was so impressed with Datsyuk and his stick handling, he went to see him a second time. During this time, Magic Man also caught the interest of the Calgary Flames, who, along with Anderson, were going to fly to Moscow to see him play. But a storm forced no flights into Moscow, so the Flames scout never got to see him play. The Red Wings were the only team to have a scout see Datsyuk play prior to the '98 NHL draft, so they were able to snag him 171st overall in '98. He wouldn't make his debut until 01-02. And in his first two seasons, he would score 24 goals and 86 points. But what makes Magic Man so special was his ability with the stick in his hands. 1 second, the puck is in opponent's stick, and the next second, Datsyuk has changed from defense to offense. And he may be the best back checker of his generation. And his ability to steal the puck from behind could be called his signature move. He was the first to win the Selke 3 seasons in a row since Bob Gainey. But truly what makes him so special in tonight's best was his ability to turn quickly from defense to offense and creating many scoring chances for himself and the Red Wings. You want to see how great he was? Watch the highlight of him stealing the puck versus Nashville, where he steals the puck, turns around, shoots it behind Pecorine. Pecorine is looking the other way, thinking his guy is coming out the other side of the net. Check that out if you want to see how great he was defensively.
So, Michael, I know when you were in the league with Pavel, he was like a fourth line center because Detroit was so stacked. But your thoughts on him as a player? He didn't really have any weaknesses. And as far as an offensive standpoint, he may be the best offensive player we're talking about tonight.
Well, he definitely is the best offensive player. So I finished in 2000. So if he came in 01 or 2, I missed him completely. But I mean, his skill level offensively was just off the charts too. So I mean, it's hard to think about a guy. And I mean, obviously we talked about you just mentioned Bergeron earlier, like so good offensively, but then again, to have that ability to play on the defensive side as well as they did is why those guys are so amazing and so good. So, I mean, I've always been really, really impressed with Datsyuk as a player. But it's not just his defense, but his offense was so good as well. Crazy, intelligent hockey player.
Did the left wing lock help that at all? Was it such a great system that it helped him from a defensive standpoint?
Well, I don't know if we've ever figured out that left wing lock. I can remember playing against Detroit in the '98 finals, and we were like, how do we beat this? We didn't know. We didn't figure it out. Obviously, we got swept in 4 games, but their team was just better than ours. But I think for guys like him, he can play in any system. He's so smart that he would have excelled in any type of system.
Well, let's move on to Brian.
All right, I got a five-time Stanley Cup winner, Bob Gainey. I played 16 seasons from 1973 to 1989, all with the Montreal Canadiens. So statistically, it's difficult to track the defensive play of a forward. Plus minus can give us a partial idea. And, of Gainey's 16 seasons, only twice he finished in the negatives. His top mark was plus 36 in 81-82. But beyond statistics is the eye test. And by utilizing the eye test, the Professional Hockey Writers Association has been awarding the best defensive forward in the NHL what's called the Frank Selke Trophy. This trophy has been given out 47 times to 25 different recipients. And Bob Gainey won it in 4 consecutive seasons from its inception in 77-78 to the 80-81 season. Only Patrice Bergeron has won it more times than him. And I might add that the Selke Trophy was created 5 seasons into Gainey's career. So he could have won it even more. And many hockey experts have suggested that Gainey is the main reason the Selke Trophy was created in the first place. The league needed a way to honor his great defensive forward play. Beyond the stats and the eye test, what else can you go to? You could go to expert opinion. This quote by the great Dennis Potvin sums up Gainey nicely. He was the guy who made Montreal really hard for me to play. He hurried you. If you did not turn in time and really hustle after the puck and get rid of it right away, he planted you. Hell, he planted you even if you did make the play. After a few shifts, I'd be throwing the puck away. He took me off my game and made me play too quickly. I don't think I played nearly as well at a Bob Gainey tempo as I did when I controlled the pace of the game. And that's the end quote. So then in 1979, after Gainey led the Habs to the Stanley Cup and won the Conn Smythe, the head coach of the Soviet Union's team, Viktor Tikhonov, famously proclaimed Bob Gainey to be the most complete player on the planet. So no matter which way you look at it, Bob Gainey is synonymous with superb defensive play from a forward.
Michael, you grew up in Canada. I'm sure the dynasty of the 70s for the Canadians was probably a big part of your life there. But Gainey, I always say the Canadians had an unfair advantage back then, but he is part of maybe the greatest dynasty of all time. What are your thoughts on him?
Oh, 100%. And I think, and I don't necessarily disagree with that comment about the trophy was basically established because of a player like Bob Gainey or Bob Gainey himself. And the fact that he won it, I think it's an advantage. I think centermen have an advantage when it comes to winning awards like the Selke, because they're more involved in the defensive zone. And for Gainey to win it 4 times in a row and for the first 5 seasons not even to be in existence, I think that it really makes him the front runner, potentially a front runner for what we would say the second best, because he was absolutely unreal. And I have nothing but tremendous respect for the game that he played. And, ultimately we as defensive players all kind of looked up to him, and that's what we would want to be like. Although we played, I started out on the left side. So, but he was the guy for sure. 100%.
So before we move on to our final two, Michael, I looked up the stats for you. In 92, you finished 29th in Selke, and in 93, you finished 10th.
Oh my. Okay.
So there you go. There's the stats for you.
Yeah. Okay.
So hey, 10,
wow,
top 10. There you go. Yeah. So let's move.
I'll have to tell my kids that.
Yeah. Let's move on to Chris. Who are you bringing us?
All right. Thank you. I'm going to bring you probably the protege of Bob Gainey, Guy Carbonneau. And I think the big story with him is that his career really transformed when it didn't go the way that he thought it would. So he came up through the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, and his last year there, 182 points. So if you're familiar with Wayne Gretzky's junior career, that was what he scored his last year too. So for all purposes, he came up through the juniors as this scoring phenom. And despite that, he fell to the second round in the NHL draft, went to Nova Scotia to play in the AHL for 2 years, did some self-reflection, and really kind of honed his game as a defensive forward. After he got his big break in the NHL, he was underneath Bob Gainey for the Canadiens there, and every year just ratcheted it up. Won a cup in '86, eventually became the captain, won three consecutive, but three Selke trophies with the Canadiens, 88, 89, 92. And then in my opinion, the culmination of his career, he won a cup in 93. And really the story of that was against the Los Angeles Kings. And Gretzky, the guy that came through the juniors right before him, scored 182 points and went in the league and dominated the career he was kind of modeling after. He said, put me up against him. So he went line for line with Wayne Gretzky, held him to 2 points the entire series and not a single shot in Game 5 where the Canadiens lifted the cup. So to me, I think he kind of got that monkey off his back and really culminated his career there. Finished out with the Stars, did win one more cup as a veteran presence with that team, had a respectable coaching career, and then was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Some names or some legacies for him. The equivalent of the Selke Trophy in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League is now named after Guy Carbonneau. So it's the Guy Carbonneau Trophy for the best offense or defensive forward. And the man that gave his induction speech to the Hockey Hall of Fame was Mr. Bob Gainey. So to me, there's a pretty good case that he kind of took the ball and or the puck and advanced it even further. To your point, Brian, about some stats, I tried to glean some stats from him too. I think that one of the biggest things I saw with Guy Carbonneau's stats is, the trademark of a defensive forward is your penalty killing presence. So couldn't find much on penalties killed, but he does lead everybody that has ever won a Selke on shorthanded points, including Patrice Bergeron. So with 33 shorthanded goals, 17 shorthanded assists, 50 total points, Bergeron has 48. So to me, that says, he's a 200-foot player. He can score for you. He can defend for you. And as far as the eye test and the video, I think when you go back and look at his Hall of Fame induction little blurb on YouTube, there's several clips of him diving in front of shots. And man, that's just a lot of bruises. So my hat's off to Guy Carbonneau. Hope you vote for him. But I think he's got a lasting legacy that is going to be hard to measure up to, aside from the great Patrice Bergeron. So for your consideration, Guy Carbonneau.
Nice job, Chris. So Michael, as he stated, he learned from the master Bob Gainey.
Yeah, he did.
What are your thoughts on Guy? I mean, three Stanley Cups are hard to argue.
I loved his game. And, like the amount of shots that he would block, he wasn't super aggressive at the top because he was such a good shot blocker. Like, it was crazy how many shots he would block. And you're right. Like, I mean, obviously I did a little bit of stuff too, but I knew that before. Like, he was a highly skilled offensive player in major junior. And then when he gets to the NHL, and I talked recently about that with some people with respect to my own game, and players coming into the NHL, they need to figure out how they need to play. It's not how they want to play. And a guy like him found that niche with Montreal of what they needed and how he could contribute there and transformed his game. And credit to him. Like, he might have been a little more stubborn and tried to make it as a totally offensive player, but he was intelligent enough to know where his niche was with the Canadiens and how he was going to fit in and how he could help them win. I mean, nothing but respect for that person. And I mean, obviously we had some, good rivalry there when I was in the Nordiques and he was in Montreal, and it was a lot of fun, but man, what a tremendous player. So he absolutely deserves to be in the conversation. And a guy, his stats is never going to get him into the Hall of Fame, but guess what? That's where he is.
So we're going to move on to our last player, but I just want to say before we do that, I know some of you are probably wondering where's Sergei Fedorov, Ron Francis, some other guys. Everyone tonight that is being represented has won 3 or more Selke trophies. So that's pretty much how we came up with our list. And I'm representing the last player tonight. That is Yuri Lettinen, our only right winger. So we got a winger here. fourth round pick in the 92 entry draft by the Dallas Stars, played his entire career there from 96 all the way to 2010, won that Selke 3 times, finishing second once, third place twice. And in fact, he received votes every season he played except his rookie year and his final season. So that is very impressive. He was so good that he, excuse me, picked up 6 times votes for the Hart Trophy, which obviously is for the MVP of the league. So he's not just considered defensive forward. People are thinking this guy's one of the best players in the league. Now, he's Stanley Cup champion in 99 with those Dallas Stars that Chris's guy Guy had also won a cup with. But, you know, in that series, game 7 against the Buffalo Sabres, he scored the goal to make it 1-0, and he assisted on the game winner in overtime. And I know that game winner from Brett Hall could be debated from here till the end of time, but it went in. So we're just going with that. So 2 points in a 2-score game there, 2-1 with the victory. Now he has a plus 176 on his career. That is good for 95th all time. Now that is the lowest tonight. However, he wasn't on powerhouse teams his whole career like everyone else we've discussed tonight here. Dallas was good for a period, but they only made it to one cup, one, and they lost another cup. All these other teams, you know, they got several Stanley Cups. Dallas wasn't like that, so he probably has the weakest team as a whole in tonight's debate. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. But I believe defensively that tonight it's either he or Guy that are probably the best defensive players. They don't have the offensive numbers of a Datsuk and Gainey, and that's what people see on a stat sheet, unfortunately. So I will end with this. Datsuk, Gainey, 10 times they received votes for the Selke. Guy, 11 times. Yuri Letnin, 12 times. That is the leader tonight. So, Michael, again, he was playing for the Dallas Stars, Ken Hitchcock for a time period, strong defensive system. He had a strong defensive center in Mike Modano, who also could score like crazy. So your thoughts on Yuri Letnin?
Well, he another tremendous player. I probably know him the least of all these players, although I played against him towards the tail end of my career. Different conference, wouldn't have seen him that much, and not as much as I would have saw like Carbonneau and Gainey early on, and then Datsuk's wizardry was just so apparent during his time in the league. Probably know less about Leighton than I do the other guys, but you would have to put him in the same. You have to have him in the conversation 100%, just for the value that he brought the Stars and the ability for them to win is because of guys like him, for sure.
Well, let's move into our vote, guys. Cannot pick your own. Brian, who are you taking?
Well, mad respect for all these guys. Absolutely great defensive forwards. I like what Chris said about Guy. I mean, able to shut down Gretzky, you know, in the biggest games of his life there. That's pretty impressive. So I'm gonna go with Guy.
Rollo.
Yuri Letnin also scored the game winner in Game 6 of that year. They went to the Stanley Cup, so I got to give it to him. Clutch.
Chris.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Bob Gainey. It was hard for me not to pick him to begin with, but just the fact that I think that he mentored Guy so much, I learned a lot about him, and the fact that, like you said, they may have even created the award because of his gameplay says a lot. So Bob Gainey's my vote.
Yeah, you know, from a defensive standpoint, I said it in my representation. I think Yuri and Guy are the best defensive players we're talking about tonight. It is hard for me to go against Gainey because I realized what he did, but man, their team was just they were just so much better than every other team. You know, like the Canadians of the 70s. It was almost unfair, other than a few years for the Flyers there. But so I am going to give my vote to Guy. Michael, we come to you. Who are you taking?
No, I'm going to go with Gainey. Although I think, like I said, the centermen have an advantage, but Gainey separated himself, and probably, like, I think we're talking about this award because of a guy like him.
So that gives us 2 for Guy, 1 for Yuri, 2 for Gainey. So in our show, when we have a tie, the vote from the guest counts a little more. So that is a win for Bob Gainey.
Okay.
Brian, nice job. Let's move into our Q&A. We'll go Brian, Chris, Rollo, me.
All right, Michael, you spent a handful of years up in Quebec playing for the Nordiques. Sadly, it's been over 30 years since the city lost their team. So do you believe Quebec should be given another shot in the NHL?
Well, I would love for Quebec to be given another shot in the NHL. I just don't know if it's going to happen. I don't know I'm not dialed into what the conversations are at the, at the league level. And I don't have any inside information other than I can't imagine Montreal wanting another team in Quebec, but I would love to see another team in Quebec. And I just love my time there. Drafted there, of course, in 81 and spent like 7 or 8 years in the organization, and loved my time there and loved the city, hockey people, just tremendous memories of guys playing with the Stastny brothers and Hunter and Goulet, and having the rivalry with Montreal. Like, how could you not want that back?
Right,
So right. I just wish it would happen, but I'm not sure it ever will.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. Yes, my question deals with the Olympics. I don't know if you guys have covered this here before, but as a fan of myself, we're always tempted or teased with the prospect of NHL players being allowed to go compete in the Olympics. I know it wasn't in your day, Michael, but it's happened a few times, and I'd like to see it again. I do realize it's a long season, and the NHL at the end of the day is a business to make money. So I guess a 2-part question: do you think it's good for the game? And as a player, would you be pumped about taking that mid-season break every 4 years and traveling these Olympics, or would it be yet another burden on top of your already long season?
Well, one, I would absolutely love it. I think the players that have that opportunity cherish it. And so I'm really hoping for it, that it becomes reality, because I mean, the having the best on best, the best on best in those World Cups, it's not the Olympics. So I think the Olympics is a whole different level of engagement for people around the world, and to have the best players in the world playing in the Olympics would be amazing. And so I'm really hoping that it does happen.
Great.
Hey, Mike, you mentioned earlier about the Stastny brothers. We know their story, their history of getting into the league, but you were a part of the team when Marion first came to the team. What was the locker room like when he came in the locker room, and what were they like as teammates?
Well, they were great guys, and I played a little bit. I didn't play a ton with Marion when he was during the regular season, but that was probably when I was, got drafted and I was still trying to make the team. I can't remember if I played a regular season game, maybe in 82 when I got called up right at the start of the year. But those guys were awesome guys, but they would go at each other. It used to be funny on the bench because they would be speaking their own language, and they were holding each other accountable in Slovakian. And so you knew there was some heated conversations happening, because they were all super competitive guys, and they didn't let each other off the hook. And so when they didn't like something that was happening out there on the ice, they would give it to one another. And it was kind of fun to watch them. And we appreciated the fact that you could do that as teammates and then go out and perform. So it was kind of a lesson that, even those at that level, that you could actually have those types of hard conversations with your teammates and then go out and play for one another. And so I appreciated the fact that they were that competitive, that they'd be willing to give it to one another on the bench to try to make everybody better.
So I want to take you to 93, the Jets, Teemu Solani's rookie year, 76 goals, second year Keith Tkachuk, Hall of Famer Phil Housley, Domi, Shannon, Steen, Zamenhof, Newmanum, just to name a few. Stacked roster. You guys make the playoffs. That team had so much depth. I mean, there's guys I didn't even name. Olczyk was on there. All of soon on defense. So many. So tell me about that team and what do you think happened in that series against Vancouver?
Well, it's funny you say that, but I've been talking about this a little bit recently because we were of course super disappointed to lose that series, and I think, well, I mean, Vancouver had. I don't want to take anything away from Vancouver. We should have been able to lock that down. I didn't like one of the things that I think we could have done differently is their travel. Like we played and then we traveled home after the games, and I'm not sure if that didn't affect us 2 days later. Where if I was doing that today, I would, if we played in Vancouver, like we were getting in the door like 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning after, the time change with the 2 hour time change, the long flight, and leaving late. Our sleep patterns were a little bit messed up. I wish we would have stayed over and flew the next day and then played the next day after that. I mean, I can't, obviously that's not enough to say that, but I think, you got to credit Vancouver, but really we let them off the hook and we just didn't get it done. And it's super disappointing to this day. I still think about those series and how we were, I think 2 years in a row we were up on Vancouver and lost. So it wasn't just the 1 year. And it's tough. It's hard to swallow still.
Mike, I want to take you back to 1982, happier times of what you were just talking about. The Kitchener Rangers Junior Hockey Club. You were able to help the team to their first Memorial Cup in club history. So how would you describe that championship season?
Well, it's amazing that you guys are bringing up these questions, and I got a picture here. I don't know if I'm gonna show it here.
Oh, nice.
So,
Cool.
where's where I gotta get it? Right there. So that was in Kitchener this last weekend. We had a reunion. We had the Memorial Cup reunion last weekend in Kitchener, and they just went out of their way to make it just an absolutely fantastic event, and we loved it so much. We had 16 guys back, and we all got together for the first time. We had one other reunion that was much smaller a number of years ago, and this one was very well attended. And that team was just incredible. Like, I think they gave out some stats like 8,000 NHL games amongst the players, over 8,000 games amongst the players on that team. And we were all laughing about it. Like, we were just so lucky to be on that team, and credit to the people that put it together. When you look at the draft picks, that over the 2 years, the number of draft picks that ended up going on, like, and playing major roles in the NHL, and obviously being big roles on that team, it was just incredible. And winning championships is what, team sports, there's nothing better. And to have won the Memorial Cup in 82, and in 81, we lost in the final to Cornwall in Windsor. And we were super hungry not to let that happen again. Went and didn't have a great round robin, but we really put it together in the final game. Like, Brian Bellows had 3 goals and 2 assists in the first period in the final game against Sherbrooke. So that helps when you have that type of explosion from a player. And I don't have anything but tremendous memories from my time in Kitchener. The Memorial Cup final the first year, Memorial Cup win my second year, and have another strong team my third year. So every year that I played in Kitchener, we had really good teams. So and to win the Memorial Cup was a dream come true. And it's just amazing that we are all, like last weekend, we were all together again. It was just unreal.
All right, Michael. This is more of a softball. It's not as reflective or technical, but I'm a dad of a couple of high school athletes. They play hockey in the winter, but it's wrapping up. We're transitioning to the spring sports, golf and track. And I guess my question for you is, did you play anything else when you were developing? And what do you do in your off time now?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and I really appreciate that. And I always tell people, I'll get into my second or my third career after, but I was an athlete first, and that's one thing for sure. So in my hometown, we had my hometown, Sussex, New Brunswick, about 5,000 people, and so you don't have like all the big city sports, but we had, like, growing up, we had minor baseball and minor hockey. And so those were the two things. Like in the winter, you played baseball. In the summer, in the winter, you played hockey. In the summer, you played baseball. Then when we got into, middle school or junior high, or whatever, I got on the soccer team, enjoyed soccer. So those were kind of my three. And then I ran too. So I was a cross country runner, ran track and field, as much stuff as I could do to keep active. And fitness has been a big part of my life, even after I stopped playing hockey. So, yeah, I was an athlete first, and then I'll tell you a little bit about my career since the NHL. I became a hockey coach at St. Thomas University for 9 years. I transitioned into the athletic director role, and then part of the reason I love that role so much is because I enjoyed all the sports, and I always said I was an athlete first. It's not a challenge for me, or it's not a problem for me to want to go to all the events. Basketball, volleyball, and I played middle school basketball until I couldn't play anymore when they stopped. They figured I needed to make a decision between hockey and basketball. I was on the middle school by our junior high basketball team. So yes, I'm a big believer in kids playing a multitude of sports and becoming great athletes. I think it'll help them in whatever sport they choose down the road to kind of to hone in on or to specialize in. I think there's a great amount of benefit to being an athlete first.
Love that. Thanks.
Mike, you played with one of the most abrasive coaches in NHL history, of Mike Keenan. But his style worked. He's a winner. He's like 4th all-time in playoff wins. What was he like in the locker room, and what did you learn from him that you think you use later in your career?
Well, I had a great amount of appreciation for Mike, and I think because he was single focused about about winning hockey games, and he let you know he wasn't afraid to ruffle feathers of of players that are let's say your premier players. If they weren't producing, or if they weren't giving an effort, he did not hold back, and he kind of treated everybody the same that way. And I respected the fact that, like, if you were, he had one of the things that he used to say was, if you're giving your best and that's about as good as you can do, I'm not really going to bug you that much. He might not play you, but he's not going to be super hard on you if he felt like he was getting as much out of you as he could. But he said, I always think it's kind of like it's a vote of confidence from me to you if I think you can do more. That means I believe you can do more, which believes maybe I think you're better than you think you are. So when he wanted more, it's because he believed in you that you could do more. So he would go on that quite a bit. I mean, he was hard on some guys, and at the end of the day, like, I didn't cut it for him, and so eventually I just I get sent down to the International League for a bit before I got traded to Winnipeg. But I don't really have anything against Mike for that, because at the end of the day, it's a professional job. I mean, I wish, and I think I played some of my best hockey when I was in Chicago for him. It's just at the time we weren't winning enough games, and he was starting to bring in more and more guys, that maybe he could win with. And it was about winning, and I have no issue with that.
So I'm going to take it back one more time here. Your career, you averaged around 50 penalty minutes a season, except for the 1992 season and the 93 season where you had 118 and 131. Do you remember anything that you might have done differently during those years, like in your style of play, that caused that high number?
Well, I think I think it partly because it was my role in the team. I played more minutes. I played more abrasive against. So those were the years that I probably matched up more so against other teams' top lines and got into more trouble because I was being really abrasive, and ended up having to get in scrums or fights or whatever else. I don't know how many fights I had in the NHL, but maybe 3 or 4 a year. But I think those years I played a lot of minutes, and I played a lot against the other team's top players, and I was trying to be as much of a pest as I could. You know, when you're playing fourth line minutes, you can't spend that much time in the box unless you're a fighter. So when you're playing more on the third line and you're playing 15, 16, 17 minutes a game, and you're playing against the other team's top line, you just get involved in more stuff. So I think that was it more than anything. It's the amount of minutes I was playing and who I was playing against. Like when I was in Washington, I was almost a fourth liner the whole time I was there. You couldn't get in that many scrums, and you couldn't be in the box that much, or you wouldn't be on the team.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michael Eagles, for joining us. We appreciate you coming on.
Oh, no problem. And I will. They did ask me what I do now. So I'm retired now from my job, and I've transitioned so ever since I retired, I started into triathlon. So that's my thing now. So that's how I keep fit and active, or love sport in general. But triathlon is my thing now. So it's a great sport, and there's a lot of variety, and I love to compete. So.
Awesome. We'll have to have you back for a debate about triathlon athletes. That'd be fantastic. We do all sports here. So
Oh, good enough. Good enough.
I remind everybody, hit that like, subscribe, notification button. I want to thank you everyone for watching. We'll see everybody next time. Everyone have a great night.